Welcome to a news blast here on Political Napalm. Let's get right into it. This one's going to be focused on two specific things, so it's going to be a fairly tight and hopefully pretty short news blast. So let's get into it. This week here in June, of course, we had the infamous OceanGate submarine that was attempting to get down to the wreck of the Titanic and had several passengers on board, including the billionaire who created this sub. And there's been definitely a whole lot of news coming out about the OceanGate sub. Poor Logitech got in a bit of, I shouldn't say hot water because it's not their own fault. They got into a bit of a sticky wicket because of the fact that the controller being used on the sub was a old gamepad that Logitech had out years ago, many years ago. And the pilot, or the CEO, Stockton Rush, actually showed off this controller with some slight modifications to the thumbsticks there. And now Logitech is taking a bit of like a stock hit and some trolling over here because of the use of this gamepad by Stockton Rush. This is a very old style gamepad. This is one that was known for being really PC only. This was not at a time where controllers could kind of go back and forth between consoles and PC and everything, because of the rather universal nature of USB. And the military has used controllers, game controllers in the past, like Xbox controllers. They've used video games for simulation. I don't remember what particular game it was, maybe Quake, but there was an FPS that was infamous by being used by the U.S. Armed Forces for training. But unfortunately, poor Logitech is now taking heat because of this little demonstration here of that old Logitech gamepad. The Amazon page for the Logitech controller that used in the missing Titanic submarine has now been inundated with troll reviews. Over the past couple days, much of the spotlight on the OceanGate sub and its 5-member crew has been about the fact that the submarine was piloted by an old Logitech video game controller. And yeah, I can't imagine. I think I found the problem for that submarine, best used for video games, not mini subs. Rush Stockton was a true explorer pioneer. I think it'll be nice to show some respect in the reviews. Logitech wanted nothing to do with this. I feel terrible for them. They are unfairly being caught up in this over here. And yeah, the old F310 gamepad over here, it is known for being what you might call PlayStation style, because the thumbsticks are together in the center rather than being offset a la Xbox style, which tends to flip what this circular portion, which is called the D-pad, it takes the left side, flips the D-pad, and the thumb controller. I had a controller similar to this many years ago. This is a very old controller, and you can see here on Amazon it's going up to $75. This is not a $75 controller. This 20 over here at Best Buy is actually more like what it should be. But this controller is now going to go down in infamy thanks to what Stockton did. But Joe Exotic of Tiger King fame is coming out with the hot take of everybody should just be chill and stop politicizing this whole event. As Brian Krasenstein says here on Twitter, the Titan tragedy and the deaths are not Joe Biden's fault. They're not Elon Musk or Starlink's fault. They are not the fault of the United States Navy, nor are they the fault of the United States Coast Guard. The fault in this lays that the CEO has admitted to being a little avant-garde with this and cutting corners and making this out of carbon fiber and titanium, which is a novel concept for aviation. It is lightweight and it does hold up to the type of forces you would experience in aviation. However, by doing a submersible that was going down extremely far into the ocean, it does not stand up to those kind of forces particularly well. Also, a previous engineer of this sub many years ago came out and said the viewport on this submarine is not rated to go down as far as the Titanic. It is rated to only go down about, I think it's like a tenth of that. And he was fired for it. He was a whistleblower that said this is going to be very, very dangerous. This viewport is not rated for any large amount of depth, and he was fired from the project. And yeah, not a particularly good look to fire a person who is telling you about safety. And I wish this sub could have been tested via remote control at least a few times before humans were in it, and unfortunately that was not the case. And at this point in time, they know that this sub has unfortunately met its demise, including the people inside of it. The problem is you have some anti-left, anti-Biden related people blaming Biden for this tragedy, including Dan Crenshaw out of Texas, who wanted to go ahead and attempt to blame Biden for not doing something sooner. And I think this is positively ridiculous for somebody to say Joe Biden could have made any kind of change in this whatsoever. So the facts are still very murky about this. However, the Navy, through a secret dragnet of underwater devices, said they thought what could have been the pop of the sub just shortly after it was reported to have fallen out of contact with its master ship up above at the ocean level there. They, just after it went out of communication, the United States Navy said they thought they heard something based on its top secret technology that was monitoring the ocean. However, they couldn't really report it at the time because they didn't know what it was. And knowing how sounds travel underwater, I mean, honestly, just go look at the movie Hunt for Red October. I feel the Hunt for Red October, in a lot of ways, could give people quite a good deal of perspective on this whole OceanGate situation here and how sound travels underwater, what things sound like, and everything. So the criticism has been, okay, if the Navy heard this supposed pop way back on Sunday, why did this drag out the rest of the week of some potential hope and some people saying they heard rather rhythmic and consistent banging and everything? Again, the Coast Guard has stated we didn't know what that was either. We heard something. It sounded rhythmic, and to be honest, when you hear something rather rhythmic in the ocean, out in nature, especially knowing that there is going to be humans in the area, I think it's a reasonable assumption to think it could have been potentially man-made. Who knew what this was at this point? This could have been maybe part of the debris from the sub sort of rhythmically banging against the Titanic, or There's been a lot of conjecture about it, but the biggest failure in all of this seems to be cutting corners and not testing this sub before it went down with humans. Think of it like a medicine trial. You go through lab trials, you go through animal trials, you go through volunteers and everything. This skipped straight from concept to execution, and people have discussed the materials used in this sub were not going to be rated for the depth that it went down, and were not really rated to do what this thing was designed to do. Carbon fiber is not something you want to put in an external forces situation. It has bend and it has flex, but it will absolutely crumple when faced with universal stress on it from every direction. It is not meant to withstand maintaining a cylinder form. If you were to put immense pressure on the aluminum of a soda can, that's what the sub faced, unfortunately. Some people have also noticed that one of the monitors in the sub was bolted right into the hull, which introduced possible stress points, especially in knowing that it's carbon fiber. There's been some commentary that, well, where else are you going to bolt the monitor and everything? And people pointed out, well, you don't bolt it into the hull, which is carbon fiber, which introduces collapse points in carbon fiber where it can warp even further than just the whole of it being down there in that kind of pressure. So James Cameron has come out and weighed in on this, because he has been down to the level of the Titanic and further beyond it in a submersible that he designed, and it was featured in the 2014 film Deep Sea Challenge 3D, where he went down into the Mariana Trench. And his point of it, he's one of the ones that talked the most about the fact that carbon fiber was used in it. His own journey included only himself, and he didn't bring others along, so he only did the risk himself. Chief among Cameron's criticisms was OceanGate's decision making around the hull of its submersible. If they were designing a vehicle to carry passengers and it would put through certification test protocols with one of the big names in the business like the American Bureau of Shipping, but they didn't do that for the Titan. He said, I think it was unconscionable that this group did not go through a rigorous process. The whistleblowing employee raised alarms about OceanGate in 2018 over its decision to operate the subs as experimental vessels rather than seeking the certification. Asked about the carbon composite used and its design, Cameron said it's completely inappropriate for a vessel that sees external pressure. He went on to say carbon fiber is very helpful when used for applications subject to internal pressure like scuba tanks, but he said for something that's seeing external pressure, all the advantages of composite material go away. It's just a known thing in the engineering community. So I don't think anything about this sub should be politicized in any direction in politics, be it left or right, be put on the military, be put on Biden, be put on the rescue efforts or the news, continuing to show hope for several days. I am not one of these people who are going to say it is a distraction for things in Russia or things in American politics. This is simply an event that happened this week. Many, infinite number of things have also happened this week. Its relation to anything else is pure coincidence. I don't think in any way, shape, or form the rescue efforts were drawn out to give a sense of well-being, baby Jessica down the well kind of a thing. Baby Jessica down the well, it worked out that time for days and days, and the coverage and everything. This is a scenario where things didn't, and in all honesty, it probably ended as quickly as it started, and it probably ended instantly. What the banging was, I don't know. You would need somebody well versed in underwater acoustics to listen to those tapes and be able to discern exactly what the banging was, how rhythmic it was. Could it have just been metal clanging on metal due to the flow of water down there? Who actually knows other than the people who heard it? But I believe none of this was done on purpose. And for people like Patches McGee over here, Crenshaw, to say that, criticize Biden, criticize the U.S. military, and he was a member of the armed forces, and he should have known better. Here he's saying the Coast Guard and the Navy deploying the deep sea sub. It should have been out there sooner. If you had deployed those assets, they would have arrived on the sea Wednesday morning at the latest. If they had deployed that 6K ROV, they would have seen what's down there sooner. It wouldn't have mattered, because likely what the Navy heard shortly after it went out of communication range was most likely when everything ended for this entire adventure. So things getting out there quicker, all it would have done is just maybe end the mystery quicker, but I think the outcome would have been the same. So moving on to the second thing here in the news blast, RFK Jr., Robert Kennedy Jr., is making some waves by running as a Democrat along with the Crystals lady, Marianne Williamson, seeking the Democratic nomination against Joe Biden in the 2024 election. Marianne Williamson is trying to be taken more seriously this time, but a lot of people just simply refer to her as the Crystals lady from the last election. Kennedy, on the other hand, has been making waves as this sort of anti-vax, right-wing talking points, running as a left-winger. He's running as a Democrat, but basically his platform in so many ways is simply right-wing based. That's what it is. When people come out, these sort of middle ground people that think that they are the Joe Roganites of the political sphere and want to say, oh, but he is a liberal. He's very much a liberal. And, they want to take this sort of centrist approach to him because they think Rogan is their god, and things that Rogan does and talks about has to be the most balanced thing in the world. And a lot of podcast rating services like Ad Fontes, which I know they get a lot of crap, but a lot of people do consider Joe Rogan kind of centrist, shading to the right. I think lately I would shade him a little further to the right, similar to Elon Musk, or I would shade much much further to the right than anything of center. But RFK has sort of been making waves lately, and a lot of people who are left or liberals or Democrats believe that RFK is a Trojan horse and that he is very much a right-wing person, and they point to the fact that he has pictures with Roger Stone and he's endorsed by Steve Bannon and other, people try to counter that and so people take pictures with people. You have there's probably pictures out there of Trump with the Clintons and everything like that, and people want to say, well, RFK's kids are vaxxed and everything. Yes, that may be what happened in the past, literal years ago. However, here in 2023, RFK is a Tuliksana Gabbardova 2.0. He is not a serious Democrat or liberal or leftist by any stretch. Not just by the company that he keeps, but also by who endorses him, Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is quoted as saying that basically RFK is a plant. RFK Jr. is in fact a plant. It is kind of the Kanye West of 2024. He's there to take away votes from Biden, to weaken him If you take enough votes away from Biden, potentially Trump or a Republican candidate can kind of eke in there. RFK, if he was to actually run and be serious, should be running on the right based on his stances and everything. And it's now coming out that he's being bankrolled by the super PAC that have been behind Marjorie Taylor Greene, George lying asshole Santos, and Herschel, you gotta be kidding me, pudding brain Walker. The super PAC is just one example of the nominally Democrat candidates running a campaign that's awash in support from backers of Donald Trump. Last month, supporters of RFK Jr.'s presidential bid created a super PAC titled Heal the Divide. On the website, the group, whose name is borrowed from Kennedy's own campaign slogan, advises voters that only RFK Jr. can unite the nation and start healing America. Where have we heard this language before? Where have we heard this absolutist language before? The only I can do it, only I can fix it, only I know taxes, only I know Putin, only I know China. It is very Trumpy. Or Sith, depending upon what you like to follow in media. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. It is very Trump language here, that the only I can do it, only I can fix it, I'm the best, I know the most, this is the best. There's nothing abnormal about a candidate getting a super PAC, even a candidate making a long shot bid like Kennedy's. What is abnormal is that Kennedy is running a Democrat in the Democratic primary, while the creators of the super PAC have a deeply pro-Donald Trump bent, including ties to Marjorie Taylor Greene, George Santos, and Herschel Walker. The FAC filings list Jason D. Bowles of RTA Strategy as its treasurer, using the RTA's website and mailing address. In 2022, Greene's campaign and leadership PAC Save America, Stop Socialism paid the firm more than $372,000 to work on her 2022 congressional race, compiled by Open Secrets. So, this PAC backed Marjorie Taylor Greene. The Georgia-based RTA, funded by political consultant Rick Thompson, also worked for Pudding Brain Walker in his failed but unfortunately extremely close 2022 Senate race. Thompson served as a custodian for Walker's campaign committee, and Bowles worked as the treasurer of that committee, earning the firm roughly $50,000 according to campaign finance records. He's declining to comment, of course. We have a strict policy at our firm that we don't discuss our clients, and the Heal the Divide site does not advertise its Republican backing, but a mistake on the group's website gives away its origin. The site's terms of service appear to have been copied and pasted from the MAGA PAC, a Trump super PAC, and incorrectly refers to Heal the Divide site as magapac.com. This isn't conspiracy. This isn't blue and on level here. These are facts. These are facts that are shored up by following the money and following DNS records, web records, and everything. It's not just one magnified super PAC, however, that's backing Kennedy's run against Biden. His bid is awash in support from Donald Trump's allies in MAGA world, conservative media, and some of the Republican donor elite. Broadly, they're hoping Kennedy will make Biden look weak in the primary, hurting his chances against Trump, whatever candidate emerges from the GOP primary. You don't have to go that far back in RFK Jr.'s history to see how much of an absolute loon this guy is. So if you hear him talk, he has, I think it's called dysphonia. His voice has a tremor to it that sounds like he's on a vibrating surface, and it's coming through him as he's shaking and sort of does like this to his voice. He blames that on a flu vax. When people point out that his kids are vaxxed, yes, they were because of their age, but now he talks anti-vax stuff, and he's one of these people who thinks vaccine is the rise of autism and everything like that. This is a deeply unserious candidate. Marianne Williamson, or Williams, I forget what her last name actually is also another relatively unserious candidate for the Democratic primary. This is not a race where you see Elizabeth Warren's and Kamala and Bernie and Biden. Right now, the field on both sides just don't look that serious. I mean, you have Ron DeSantis over on the Republican side, but a lot of people are saying his campaign is just sort of falling apart. Not a lot of people are making very, very serious stances in this. Trump, for what he's got going over there, he certainly believes he's very serious. Biden seems to have serious stances on things and has a current track record, good or bad, depending on how you look at it, that he's going for. But a lot of these others, Ron DeSantis is focusing too much on being anti-woke, and it's going to cost him deeply. The divide in how Florida handled COVID and Trump picking him apart for that, and the fact that he seemed to do what everybody else was doing, but then maybe he opened too early, the mortality rate in Florida from COVID. It's so many of these candidates have problems, from Trump and Biden to on down to the secondaries and tertiaries here. They all have so many issues, and it's just a really sad state of American political affairs that these are all the candidates that we are looking at. And on the right, people like Carrie Lake think they might be a running mate, or Marjorie Taylor Greene might be a running mate. Trump is saying Pence would not. Pence might even be running for president and doesn't stand a chance in hell. Nikki Haley and I really think this will be an absolute race of the top two on either side. We don't even know if Trump is going to make it to the primaries over here with the legal issues that he's facing. And now they're trying to impeach Biden for everything under the sun. This is going to be a very, very crazy political season leading up to 2024. And who are the actual two running in the final primaries here? Like, once we get past the Sweet 16 and, the Big 8 and everything, who's going to be in the finals of this is going to be really crazy, and that primary is going to be really, really crazy. So anyway, that is it for this episode of the Political Napalm, as we dealt with Robert Kennedy Jr.'s campaign and who he is backed by, and following the money, following the structure behind him, and of course, who or what was responsible for the OceanGate tragedy. That is definitely what it is. It is nothing more. It is nothing less. It is a tragedy, top to bottom. It is not a distraction from anything that is happening. How this was handled was not a distraction from anything. It is just simply an incredible tragedy, most likely due to the construction of the sub, top to bottom, and people took a very, very calculated risk, and this did not work out well by any stretch. This is the Political Napalm, signing off.